Good morning. Welcome to the Kingsport News Hour. We're now in the 16th year of Cheonggi, the 10th month and the 8th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Miller sitting in for the second king of Cheonggu, Kyungjin, and this TKR, the King's Report News Hour. So let's take a look at what's going on around the kingdom right now. In Chungkyung, Tennessee, it is 35 degrees and partly cloudy. Cooler today with partial sunshine, high of 46. Tonight, clear and cold, low of 25. Yes, that Arctic wind is coming down. And at the hometown of our true father, in Jeongju, North Pyongan Province, Korea, 22 degrees and partly cloudy right now. Clear and colder, getting down to 18 tonight, getting into the teens. And then tomorrow, a hazy sunshine, high of 38. At the Chernigold Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, cloudy and 36 today. Right now, that is to say, and today getting up to 42 degrees, partly sunny with a few flurries, windy and cooler. Tonight, mostly cloudy and windy with flurries again, low of 26. So, snow in the forecast. And at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, mostly cloudy and 46 right now. 64 for a high today, tonight, partly cloudy and low of 40. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 46 and clear, getting down to 35 tonight, continued clear. Tomorrow, sunshine with high of 54. Gunma Palaces in Japan, 53 and clear, partly cloudy tonight, low of 44. Tomorrow, mostly sunny and pleasant, high of 64. Well, that's nice. And then in Guangzhou, Guangdong Province, currently raining, 68 degrees, and a breezy this evening, otherwise partly cloudy, getting down to 58 degrees tonight. Tomorrow, partial sunshine, high of 77. All right. Go to Father's Word, and I'm in the World Scripture, Volume 2. And let's go here too. Where are we now? We're in chapter 21. And the title of the chapter is 지도력과 Governance, Leadership and Governance. Leadership and Governance. The title of a chapter 21 in World Scripture 2. And Father's speaking here March 5th in the year 2000, volume 318, page 147 in his collection of sermons. 전체를 위하는 사람은 전체 운행에 맞추어서 생활이나 일이나 언행 심사의 모든 면에서 본이 되니만큼 자동적으로 윗사람으로 존경받는 것입니다. So, the person who lives for the sake of the whole matches everything he does to the whole, and this includes everything that he says, all his everything he says, and all his actions, and he is a model in every respect. And because he does this, then automatically he is respected as a Wisaram is a senior person. In other words, a Wisaram person who is above, literally above person, or person who is, high ranking, I guess you could say, Wisaram. Okay. Now the king once, I remember in his sermons, spoke about how we all have, we can say all have, uh, we all have a sort of a private person, a public person, and a private person. So we have the public persona that people see, but we also have the private aspect. And many times there's a big difference between the two. A person may be quite, respected by his colleagues, peers, by people in society, but then in private, though, he's quite a different person. He's commits sin. Recently, in the news, there's the story about a high school football coach who was, um, uh, I guess the football team was quite successful, and he was quite well respected in the community. But then one day, this happened in the last week or so. One day, the police came to visit his home, but I think before the police got there, I guess he disappeared. He disappeared, and uh, he's currently missing. But stories have come out that of his involvement in, in pedophilia. And let's see here. Uh, Let me find that story. Uh, 2 days ago. Yeah. Okay. Well, here's USA Today. Or okay, let's look at USA Today. Okay. So this is an example of how a person's public persona can be quite different from the private. And here, let's see, missing Virginia football coach wanted on child porn charges. And I guess that's his photograph there. Who disappeared last week is now a fugitive from justice after state police on Tuesday, November 25th, announced he was wanted on child pornography possession and child solicitation charges. Travis L. Turner, 46, who disappeared last week, is wanted on 5 counts in possession of child pornography and 5 counts of using a computer to solicit a minor. It was not immediately known if the alleged crimes involved a student or athlete or whether there is more than one victim in the case, but police on Tuesday, I'm sorry, actively searching for Turner, last reportedly seen on November 20th. So he sort of skipped town before the police could get to him. He is the head football coach at Union High School in Wise County. The team is in the midst of a perfect 12-0 season and is set to play in Virginia's Region 2D championship game. School is in Big Stone Gap in southwest Virginia, about 35 miles northwest of Bristol, Tennessee, near the Kentucky state line. So this is a very rural area. He's also a well-known figure around Southwest Virginia with a long history of athletic achievement, including time as a college quarterback. Since his disappearance, state police said they have used search and rescue teams, drones, and police dogs to assist in the hunt for the fugitive. The agency announced the update in the case after it said it obtained the 10 felony warrants for Turner on Monday. Additional charges are pending, and the case remains under investigation. And public school superintendent told USA Today the district was aware law enforcement had filed charges against a staff member who has been on administrative leave, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't want to say anything else. So police officers were sent to Turner's residence in Wise County on Thursday, November 20th. While in transit, police said agents were informed Turner was no longer at the location. So someone apparently tipped him off that the police were coming. His wife wrote the following in a since deleted Facebook post. As of right now, Travis is missing, and that's all we know. We love him and need him here with us. Just keep praying that he comes home. That's his wife. He teaches physical education, and he also played quarterback at Appalachia High School in Virginia, where he was coached by his dad, et cetera, et cetera. And he was, okay, right. So it gives some of his history there. He's a white man with brown hair, brown eyes, 6'3", 260 pounds. Last seen wearing a gray sweatshirt, sweatpants, and glasses. And there's a phone number that people can call if they have any information about his whereabouts. And the king was I remember this sermon that he gave back in Newfoundland. So it's quite a few years ago, but somehow it's stuck in my mind that as we study God's word, and as we, as I say often, as we take our the muddy pool, the pool of muddy water that is our spirit, and we continually pour clean water into it. Father said, "This is how you can." Over time, clean your spirit, and this is why we do hundoke every morning. And gradually, then the private persona comes closer and closer to the public persona, assuming that the public persona is good, right? Maybe we're what is his name? Um, uh, uh, Maybe we're a mafia figure. I don't know. Maybe the public persona has a problem in itself. But if that's the case, then also as the private becomes better and better, the public will also become better and better. And eventually the two will meet, and that is when we, I guess, are completing our character, perhaps. But there's also, the aspect of thoughts, because sin is not just words and deeds; it's also thoughts. Even when Jesus said that even if a man looks at a woman lustfully, he has already committed adultery. So it's also thoughts, and that is another dimension, I think, where even the thoughts have to be in line with God's word. So anyway, um, so we got onto that because of what the Father said about leadership, right? About leaders, people who live for the sake of the whole, and they are models for everyone. Yes, but someone can be a model, but then also the private person can be quite different. So we need to be aware of that, and also be aware of ourselves. And don't think that you fooled God. Don't think that you was fooled spirit world. So always repent, and always keep pouring that clean water into our muddy spirit. In other words, by reading Father's word. And it's best to do it, of course, together with someone. But if you can't, then even do it yourself, by yourself, if that's what all you can do. And just keep on just cleaning our spirits with Father's word until finally the public and private meet, and we are much, much closer to God. I don't know if that's what it takes to reach completion. I'm avoiding saying that because I think whether or not a person has reached completion is probably something that, well, we'll find out when we get to spirit world. They may have something to say when we get to spirit world. Okay. And God may have something to say when we get to spirit world. Yeah. All right. So, and we know Father says that there are three judgments, right? If I can remember what those judgments are: judgment of heart, judgment of merit, judgment of word. I guess I'm not sure. It's in the OSTP. All right. So let's see what is going on today. By the way, to everyone in America, happy Thanksgiving. To everyone else um, who perhaps celebrates Thanksgiving in one way or another during the year, I'll give you happy Thanksgiving now, and you can save it for when your Thanksgiving is. All right. Let's see. What are we doing today? Okay. Um, President Trump spoke to the nation, and this is in regards to a really tragic incident that happened near the White House. It was 17th and I, and that's actually quite near the White House, because 16th Street is the street that goes north, straight north from the White House. All right, it goes straight north from the White House, and the street in front of the White House is Pennsylvania Avenue. But if you go one block north, that is 8th Street. And then I Street then would be the next one, the next north. So 17th and I would be 2 blocks up and 1 block to the left. So just 3 blocks from the White House is where this shooting took place. where two National Guardsmen, West Virginia, members of the West Virginia National Guard, were shot. And I saw that where one place where they had died, but then I think now the update is that they are still in critical condition and still fighting for their lives in the hospital. I believe that's the most recent information. But President Trump, I think, was understandably shocked, I think, that such an incident took place so close to the White House. And so went on uh, he went on television and spoke to the nation about this situation. So let's take a look at this situation here in this Newsmax article. Trump calls DC guard shooting an act of evil and terror. And this is, of course, Kash Patel, the head of the FBI. President Trump on Wednesday night described the shooting of two West Virginia National Guard members by a suspect believed to be a 29-year-old Afghan national as a heinous assault and an act of evil, hatred, and terror. The two guardsmen are in critical condition after what authorities described as a targeted ambush-style attack. The suspect, identified as difficult name, was shot during the incident and is in custody with a non-life-threatening injuries. Yeah, his name is difficult because, besides, I don't want to even speak his name. I don't want that. This is an evil name. It was a crime against our entire nation, Trump said in a video address from the West Palm Beach, Florida, where he is spending the Thanksgiving holiday. The address aired on Newsmax and the Newsmax 2 free online streaming platform. It was a crime against humanity, he said. The hearts of all Americans tonight are with those two members of the West Virginia National Guard and their families. The love of our entire country is pouring out for them, and we are lifting them up in our prayers, and we are filled with anguish and grief for those who were shot. We're also filled with righteous anger and ferocious resolve. Ferocious resolve. As President of the United States, I'm determined to ensure that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. Trump confirmed reports that the suspect entered the U.S. in 2021, so that would be the first year of the Biden administration, following the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Yeah, so that chaotic withdrawal was in August, and this guy entered the country in September, according to my information. And he was reportedly lying in wait before rounding a corner near the Farragut West metro station in Northwest DC. The District of Columbia, which is Washington, is divided into four areas in Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, and Southeast. At about 2:15 p.m. local time, he then opened fire, striking a female guard member in the chest before shooting her in the head, law enforcement sources told the New York Post. And this guy, who entered the country under Operation Allies Welcome and later resettled in Bellingham, Washington, so that would be all the way across the other side of the country on the Pacific coast, allegedly then fired at and struck the second guard member. A third guard stationed nearby rushed to the area and took him down. In other words, shot him, the sources told the Post. I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth, Trump said. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. The attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation, he continued. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want even to know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. Trump also singled out Minnesota, accusing hundreds of thousands of Somalians of ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good, we're not going to put up with these kinds of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. So actually, Newsmax is leaving out a section where President Trump talks about how Somalia doesn't really have a functioning government at all and is basically a failed state. He didn't use those words, but that's basically what he's saying. So he's saying Somalia is a failed state, and yet Somalians in America are preaching to us about our constitution, about how our country is no good. So we're not going to put up with that kind of stuff. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered the country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here. So I read this morning that the State Department has now stopped processing immigration applications from people in Afghanistan. And so that apparently is the first step that's being taken. And I guess they're going to uh, take a look at every person who entered from Afghanistan under President Biden. If they can't love our country, we don't want them, he added. America will never bend, never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission. You know, America is a very generous country. Americans are very generous. And but now there is a backlash against sort of people who take advantage of that generosity. And I think you see that backlash reflected in President Trump's words here that, hey, we let you in, so uh, you need to be grateful. And if you're not grateful, then we're going to send you back. And this was the kind of thing that, Ukraine's President Zelensky also came up against in his first meeting with Trump last January, was it, or the beginning of this year anyway, where, there was that disastrous meeting where Trump said, or Vance said that he wasn't even grateful. And ever since then, every time the Ukrainian government says anything, they put the word grateful in there, just about every sentence. Well, they should. They should. Okay. But America now, many Americans now, uh, not so much the sort of leftist Democrats, woke Democrats, but certainly a lot of patriotic Americans right now are reacting against this lack of gratitude from people whose lives we saved, right? People from Afghanistan, for example, before the Taliban took over that country and started, the revenge killings and stuff like that. Uh, they really need to express gratitude, and President Trump is expressing, I think, that, and he's reflecting people's patriots' concern over the lack of gratitude that we often see here. So if they can't love our country, we don't want them. Okay. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror, and at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission. Trump closed by asking Americans this Thanksgiving to say a prayer for the two great heroes who were so horribly shot and for their loved ones. Please say a prayer. May God bless them and comfort them. So I think it's good that he spoke to the nation like this last night. All right, so that's what's going on with that terrible incident, and I hope that during this Thanksgiving day and holiday that we can continue to follow this situation on our own. Okay. All right, then let's look at this article, an interesting article in the Telegraph in the UK about how we need to start taking North Korea seriously. Um, and I've always said that dictators often tell us what they're going to do before they do it, and so we need to take dictators seriously. This was true with Hitler. It was also true. It was true with every dictator, including communist dictators, and it's certainly true with Kim Jong Un. Russia, China, and North Korea are not going to rein in their ambitions to undermine regional and global security, Telegraph says. And then there's this photograph here. Oh no, don't tell me. Oh no. A while ago I had the whole article, but they took it away from me. Ah, okay, well, all right. No, I'm not going to give them my email address. Okay. But just to make the point, though, that and what the article uh, was talking about was about how much North Korea does in terms of hacking and especially stealing money. And they were saying that something like half the foreign revenue of North Korea comes from stealing cryptocurrency or something like that, and also from hacking, not just cryptocurrency, but also hacking into banks and things like that. And also, 40% of their nuclear program is funded by, I think, this kind of hacking. And they have they're the only country in the world that has a actual sort of a hacking team, an official hacking team. And now the article said that now this North Korean team is hooking up with a Russian team, and they're going to be doing even more now because they're working together. And so we need to start taking this seriously. That was the basic gist of the article as far as I was able to read before I began this program today. So take a look at it on your own, and if you want, give them your email address. But I think at least for the first few minutes, they don't need your email address. They'll let you read it without the email address. So do a search and find it. Okay. These newspapers. Well, I guess they gotta pay the electricity bill and they have to put their kids through Ivy League colleges. So someone's gonna pay. Someone's got to pay those tuitions. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to. That was going to be my main story today, or one of my main stories. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go to the headlines on where are we now? The Epic Times. Okay. Epic Times is more generous about letting us see their articles. I like that. Okay. Oh yeah, I was okay. We'll get to that. Antisocial act at the heart of socialism. Let's see what that is. Human societies have allowed for one great loophole in the prohibition of citizens taking wealth from fellow citizens. We call it government taxation. Yeah, so otherwise it's theft, right? If I take money from your pocket, then that's theft, and I can be arrested and put in jail. But if the government does it, hey, it's called taxation, and the government is us, according to Michelle Obama. No, the government may be her, but it is not us. The basic principle of praxeology, the study of human action, as set forth by the late great Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises, and he's the sort of the founder of the Austrian School of Economics, is that humans act purposefully. More specifically, we choose from the various options open to us in accord with what we value most highly at any given moment. The goal is alternately described as improving our sense of well being, or as Mises put it rather awkwardly, to reduce felt uneasiness. This does not mean that human beings always choose wisely or that they choose the course of action that is the best for their lives in the long run. We are not like penguins, who, as can be seen in the documentary film March of the Penguins, are robotically programmed to do certain things at certain times as a matter of sheer survival. And this is important. The Here we go. We choose from the various options open to us in accord with what we value most highly at any given moment. So in economics or in a economic or in the society, um, companies that are competing against each other are always trying to provide what? Greater value to the consumer. And so the consumer then is choosing that which gives them the most value and for the lowest price. So what does that mean? That means that always then products should get better and better and also cheaper and cheaper. And so this is why in the Austrian School of Economics they say that the natural state of a free market economy, and that put emphasis on the free market, natural state of a free market economy is deflation, not inflation. In free market economy, people are competing against each other to provide greater value at cheaper and cheaper cost, So always products are getting better and they're getting cheaper. But they're not, right? We don't have a we don't have a deflation today. What do we have? We have a debt economy. We have inflation, and that's because of what? Well, this rascal named John Maynard Keynes and the desire of governments to spend more than they have, spend more than they take in. So they become debtors, and because they are debtors, they fear deflation because under deflation, the value of the debt grows, and you don't want that. You want the value of the debt to go down instead so that you can pay it back more easily. And so that's why we have inflation. And that's why central banks say, oh, we must have inflation 2%, 2%, 2%. Well, now they're saying, okay, well, maybe 3%. Anyway, let's continue here. So not like penguins, all right? Penguins really have no choice. They follow the instinctual instructions embedded in them. Humans, on the other hand, have abundant latitude to choose actions that, in retrospect, will be seen to be not so smart or even self-destructive. Far from being the profit-maximizing Homo economius hypothesis, come on, early morning, hypothesized in classical economics, humans are free to make choices, but choices that undermine their health, reduce their economic standard of living, or otherwise sabotage their own welfare, such as choosing to go with Keynes instead of instead of Mises. Millions are the humans who, for the sake of short-term pleasure or ease, have squandered the opportunity to achieve success in academics, sports, marriage, friendship, career, etc. Right? And this is why we cannot really uh, fully predict what dictators are going to do in terms of attacking other countries. Like Putin maybe regrets, I don't know, his, or at least some people in Russia may regret Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. And we thought that he would not, because it was against his interests. And well, we were largely right, but it doesn't matter. He still did it. The praxeological imperative is demonstrated in how we shop for things. Humans want the best deal. That is, they want what they want at a certain moment of time at the lowest cost. They could have a totally different priority next month, next week, or even in the next hour. There are, of course, times when the desire for something is so intense that individuals disregard the lowest cost factor. For example, some people are so rich that cost is of no concern to them. Or one may have such an urgent need for something as to be willing to pay far more than would be the case in less pressing circumstances. Here is a softball question for you. What is the optimum price for anything you want? It's zero, of course. We would love to get things for free, but how many people or businesses would give you their property for nothing in exchange? Lots of luck with that. There actually exists, however, a way to get something for nothing. Steal it. Human societies have largely condemned theft, but now recently, people go into Walmart or other places and just walk out with stuff, and they know that the store has a policy of not challenging people who do this, and so they just do it, and so companies are collapsing as a result of that. They recognize that theft was both economically counterproductive and socially destabilizing for the whole. Reason led to the conclusion that social cooperation and its resulting prosperity depend on respect for property rights. The Judeo-Christian ethos coincides with this belief, accepting as divine law the command, thou shalt not steal. Note the absence of any qualifier such as except by majority vote. Because one person stealing from another is fundamentally antisocial act, self-interested praxeological humans have opted to criminalize theft and to defend private property as an essential prerequisite for a viable prosperity producing social division of labor. Praxeology operates at both an individual and social level. Sometimes self-interest requires self-restraint and agreeing to abide by certain ethical norms for the benefit of all. However, human societies have allowed for one giant loophole in their prohibition of citizens taking wealth from fellow citizens. We call it government taxation. Prosperity can continue to grow, both in terms of overall wealth production and an increasing number of individuals Partaking of that growing prosperity when government taxation remains limited. Think of the United States for the first 150 years of our history, and is not weaponized by one class of citizens to use against another. Moreover, though taxation amounts to institutional theft, or to use the term employed by Frederick Bastiat in his immortal essay, The Law, legal plunder. Often that plunder favors the elites at the expense of the masses. For example, France's kings and nobles living high on the hog by oppressively taxing the commoners before the French Revolution. Other times, the plunder is more democratically distributed. For example, the Roman Empire, where a vote dependent Senate bestowed ever more freebies, dubbed by historians bread and circuses, upon an ever increasing class of beneficiaries until the number of those who were bearing the ever increasing burden of taxation, the citizens who actually worked to produce wealth, shrank to the point where the system imploded. And by the way, if you are a citizen or a resident of New York, New York's been handing out free checks. And according to this story that I was reading this morning, many of them have already gone out, but 8 million inflation refund checks sent out ahead of Thanksgiving, it says here. Not all at once, many of them have already gone out. But for example, over the past 2 months, checks of up to $400 have been sent to eligible taxpayers. so, so they're doing the same thing that apparently the Roman Empire did. Fast forward to the present, the enlightened praxeological social compact that acknowledged that the individual pursuit of happiness necessarily includes the need to curb one's own actions has largely atrophied. Decades of progressive and socialistic ideology has whittled away the traditional American moral restraint against taking the property of some to give to others via the more antiseptic, supposedly civilized way of using government to do the actual taking. For the so-called Christian socialists, an oxymoron, if there ever was one, you need to revisit the parable of the Good Samaritan. This misuse of government would have offended our founding fathers. As Thomas Jefferson put it, it is strangely absurd to suppose that a million of human beings collected together are not under the same moral laws which bind each of them separately. Right? So, in other words, collectively, or the whole has to obey the same laws that the individuals have to obey. So the whole cannot steal, just like individuals cannot steal. Today, millions of Americans have reverted to primitive praxeological impulses free of moral restraints. I want that, and the easiest way to get it is to vote for a politician motivated by the similar amoral, immoral self-interest of winning elections by buying votes through the device of handing out freebies paid for by other people's money, fraudulently and cynically labeled social justice by its practitioners. And that's exactly what's going on in New York, I would say, right? Even though Hochul, the current governor, is not running for re-election, I don't think, or is she? I'm not sure. Okay, but she wants her party to anyway to win the next governorship. So that's probably one reason why they're doing this. That we are far advanced on the progressive road to serfdom is supported by abundant evidence. That includes $38 trillion of national debt, and it continues to grow. It was 37 just a few weeks ago. Now it's 38, and it's going to be 39 pretty soon. Millions of Americans perennially on the government dole. We saw that, what was it, 47 million Americans, they said, were affected by the food stamp situation. Although, some of those people may not actually be alive. But anyway, I think right now they're requiring everyone to re-register to figure out just exactly how many people that are actually there. Millions of Americans perennially on the government dole, and millions more wanting free bus rides and daycare to be paid for by the rich, paying higher taxes to Santa Claus politicians. That's Mamdani, right? The upcoming mayor of New York. He's going to be inaugurated in about 5 weeks, I guess. The evidence includes one political party so obsessed with government running the whole economy that it chose to shut down the government for a month and a half in an attempt to throw good money after bad in subsidies to partially offset the failures of the Affordable Care Act rather than repeal it. Meanwhile, the other party, despite having talked loudly about cutting government spending, continues to go along with ever larger federal spending. And this is it, right? Even in his first term, President Trump said something about cutting government spending, but actually, no, the government debt went up, the national debt went up during his first term, and it's going up again today. This is why I say that America already is beyond the point of no return. And I'm afraid that's the case, and the whole thing is going to collapse at some point. And many economists, and federal the Fed chairman, uh, Federal Reserve Board chairman, have been saying that we're on an unsustainable path, unsustainable path, unsustainable path, but nobody does anything about it. And I think that's because nobody can do anything about it. Warren Buffett, of course, wasn't it, had the idea that, well, um, why don't we make a law that says that anytime the federal budget does not get balanced, every member of Congress loses their job. They cannot run for reelection. Then that would fix it. Well, perhaps, but no, because the people coming in would do the same thing. And besides, uh, let's look at what balancing the federal budget would entail. Once we pay for defense and once we pay for the interest on the debt, we don't have a whole lot of money left over. Maybe that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That that those two things by themselves are about $2 trillion. Ah, a good thing. I don't know. Maybe we should try the Buffett method. The evidence includes one political party's. Okay, we already did that. Okay, we learned the appropriate lessons of history. Will we learn the appropriate lessons of history? No. That's an easy answer. Have a moral revival that puts rational limits on praxeological impulses and stop the gradual social suicide of using government to transfer wealth from some citizens to others, or will we end up like Rome? Which do you think is more likely? Well, I think, you know, collapse is much more likely. Unfortunately, collapse is far more likely. But we don't know when that's going to happen because these politicians, one thing that they're very good at is kicking the can down the road. In other words, delaying the inevitable, delaying the inevitable. And they've done it very well for decades so far, and they may still have a few decades left over. We don't know. But then we never know. Something may happen, and the whole thing could come crashing down. Apparently, in 2008, according to some people, we were just hours away from the collapse of the world economy or the world financial system. But then they, of course, printed up trillions of dollars to fix that, and they may keep doing that until finally it's just too big to save, not too big to fail, but too big to save. All right, let's see what else is on Epic Times. Right, let's look at the headlines here. Right, Trump says South Africa won't be invited to 2026 Miami G20. Okay. Department of Justice is supporting a challenge to Hawaii's public carry gun restrictions. Okay. Hawaii has very strict gun control laws. Mhm. Yeah, we get this article every year. Experts advise how to avoid political sparring at family holiday gatherings. Threat to church screening of organ harvesting film escalates with mass shooting warning. Let's take a look at this. Okay, this is okay. So this happened in Australia. A bomb threat targeting a Sydney church screening exposing Beijing's systematic organ harvesting has escalated with a second message threatening a mass shooting and bomb attack. The new threat said several days after the first, again targeted the November 29th screening of the award-winning state organs at St. John the Evangelist Church in Campbelltown in southwestern Sydney. Both warnings were delivered through Eventbrite, the platform hosting registrations for the event. Okay, let's take a look at this link here about the movie. 97th Oscar Best Documentary Feature. Official contender. Unmasking Transplant Abuse in China. State Organs is a powerful documentary exposing China's secret forced organ harvesting and the brave journey for justice. 3 hour long. Okay. And so forth. Okay, I was hoping we could get a trailer or something, but it doesn't look like it. All right. Well, you can check on that. Maybe take a look at the trailer. It might be a good thing for us to have, right? We will infiltrate as viewers, begin the screening, and suddenly open fire, killing everyone and throwing bombs into the crowd. This is not a joke. Eventbrite has notified local law enforcement in New South Wales, Australia, and shared details of the report, including the source information. Okay. So they've found no immediate threat to the public. However, the police investigation has since intensified. Well, don't know how much they can trust the local police. And I don't think Australia would allow people to go there with tools of self-defense. So that's a situation there. While the center of the threat is unclear, the pattern mirrors previous incidents linked to the CCP's transnational repression efforts, which aim to intimidate dissidents abroad while undermining democratic freedoms. For instance, in Taiwan this year, government offices and hosting venues in multiple cities received at least 17 emails threatening explosions or mass shootings aimed at stopping performances of Shen Yun, a New York-based arts group founded by Falun Gong practitioners to showcase classical Chinese dance and music from the era before the communist takeover. Taiwan's Criminal Investigation Bureau traced the emails to Xi'an, China, through a multi-agency investigation. The emails appear to have originated near the Huawei Xi'an Institute, a key research center supporting Beijing's global tech ambitions, Taiwan authorities confirmed. Lucy Zhao, the president of the Australian Falun Dafa Association, said she was shocked upon seeing the second threat message, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure she was, yes. And so the reaction from various people. Okay, so just be aware that China is doing this all over the world, and they may be doing it in the United States as well. I'm sure they are. Okay. Adopt a turkey? Why on earth would I want to adopt a turkey? Okay. Oh, I know. For the dinner table next Thanksgiving. Oh, maybe that's not what they had in mind. Okay, let's see here. Um, Deep cyclone set to snarl Thanksgiving travel in northern U.S. Yes, that's why we saw the situation with the weather where it's getting quite chilly in many parts of the U.S. right now. Well, yeah, this is really a tragic situation. I think it's still going on, isn't it? Have they put out the fire in Hong Kong? So far, 55 people are been have died, and 70 people left with injuries ranging from burns to respiratory damages. But I think they still have a lot of people missing, isn't that right? Hundreds, yeah, left hundreds missing. 279 missing is the last figure that I saw, but there's still hundreds of people are missing as officials continue to rescue residents from the high-rise apartment involved in the inferno. The fire, which began, continued to burn on Thursday, which began the previous day, and I'm guessing that that must be Hong Kong time, which is it's already evening in Hong Kong right now. Authorities evacuated hundreds of residents, while fire engulfed seven of the complex's eight towers, sending flames of smoke billowing out of windows. So apparently, the fire went from one tower to another, and these are quite high. I don't know if you saw the report on this, but I don't know how what it doesn't say how many stories these how many floors these towers have, but they seem to be more than 10. I think more than maybe more than 20. Some of the materials used on the high-rise building's exterior walls likely did not adhere to fire-resistant standards. Authorities suspect as the fire spread more quickly than usual. Apparently, there was a bamboo scaffolding attached to one of the towers, and that's where it started, I think. Highly flammable styrofoam materials believed to have been installed by constructors were found by police outside the windows on every floor close to the lift lobby. Lift is elevator lobby of the one building that did not catch on fire. And a senior superintendent of police said we have reason to believe that those in charge of the construction company were grossly negligent. Quite possibly, yes. Okay. 32 story. I see. Okay, it's 32 floors. Okay. External scaffolding, which I think was made of bamboo, and maybe that was something too. Eventually split out internally before igniting nearby towers, likely assisted by windy weather. The government will focus on the disaster and pause plans for the Legislative Council December 7 election. Okay. This was built in the 1980s and recently received a major renovation, contained eight buildings with nearly 2,000 apartments and roughly 48,000 residents. So hold on a second. That comes to what? 24 people per apartment? That doesn't sound right. 2,000 apartments, roughly 48,000 residents. 48 divided by 2 is 24. So 24 people per apartment? Well, this is Hong Kong. Something tells me that statistic needs to be fact checked. Even in Hong Kong, 24 people per apartment? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. How many bedrooms? Does that mean eight people per bedroom? I don't think so. Anyway, okay, moving on. Uh, Here, Truth Under Fire, the framing of Charlie Kirk. This looks like a video. Yeah, Epic TV. It's a video. Yeah, this looks like something that we should watch. I'm not going to show it here because of a copyright situation. And see. Okay. And massive Somali welfare fraud cases in Minnesota. Here's what we know. This is what President Trump was referring to when he was talking about how Somalians in Minnesota have destroyed that state. Billions in taxpayer money has been stolen. Millions could have gone to terrorists. An allegation that lawmakers are asking federal prosecutors to investigate. Okay. Networks of fraudsters, many from Minnesota's Somali community, exploited welfare programs and raked in billions of taxpayer dollars, authorities say. At least three major scandals are involved, one of which has been developing for years. Two others recently surfaced. then came new revelations that inspired presidential action and touched off calls for further investigation. And this is why generous Americans are now pushing back against those who are taking advantage of that generosity. And when you push back, you push back over against everyone, not just those people who are guilty of taking advantage, but even those who are not. That's the unfortunate reality of what happens when some people take advantage of the generosity of others. Then a lot of other people who are innocent also suffer. Here's what we know. Okay, what do we know? The Department of Justice said a Minnesota nonprofit called Feeding Our Future and its affiliates stole more than $240 million in federal funds in what constituted the nation's largest COVID-19 pandemic relief scheme. This was a brazen scheme of staggering proportions, then U.S. Attorney Andrew M. Luger said in 2022, when the first 47 people were charged. And this is under Biden, right? This is under Biden. The defendant's $250 million haul was used to buy luxury cars, houses, jewelry, and coastal resort property abroad, Luger said. Not even in America, not even helping the property values in America. Since then, dozens more have been charged. On November 24th, the DOJ announced it had charged a 78th defendant connected to Feeding Our Future. Whose future were they feeding? So far, about 50 defendants, including the nonprofit group's founder, Amy Bach, have been convicted. Bach is being held in federal custody awaiting sentencing. All but a handful of Feeding Our Future defendants have Somali names. At least one formed a company called Minnesota's Somali Community. The state is home to the nation's largest group of Somalis, constituting about 1% of its population, according to multiple sources, including World Population Review. Those immigrants come from a nation steeped in public sector corruption. Somalia ranks as the world's second most corrupt nation, according to the 2024 Corruption Perceptions Index. That ranking compiled, wow, got to get it together this morning. That ranking compiled by Transparency International gave Somalia 9 points on the scale, where 100 means very clean. Only South Sudan was worse with 8 points. The United States scored 65, while the world's least corrupt country, Denmark, earned 90 points. How did this happen? Because schools were closed during the pandemic, officials relaxed rules for the federal child nutrition program and began allowing non-educational organizations to feed needy children. Bad actors figured out how to take advantage. And as I pointed out, there are people whose career it is to scam other people. And this is what they do 8 hours a day, or maybe even 24/7, trying to figure out ways to scam. And their excuse many times is that, hey, it's their fault for not guarding against our scam. This is how they justify their actions. Feeding Our Future recruited people to open more than 250 nutrition program sites throughout Minnesota. Those locations fraudulently claimed to be serving meals to thousands of children a day within just days or weeks of being formed, the Justice Department said in 2022 when announcing the first wave of defendants. To enroll in the program and to receive and launder proceeds of the scheme, the defendants created dozens of shell companies in attempts to hide their fraud, which included submitting fake documentation, the Justice Department alleged. Alarm bells started ringing after officials saw how fast the program was expanding for Feeding Our Future. In 2021, the organization received and dispersed $200 million, 59 times more than the $3.4 million it handled in 2019, pre-pandemic. A 2024 special review conducted by the Minnesota Office of the Legislative Auditor found that the State Department of Education failed to act on warning signs prior to the start of the alleged fraud. Those warning signs included numerous complaints and red flags raised about Feeding Our Future, which began operating in 2016. The department also did not enforce program requirements and was ill-prepared to take effective action, the report said. The state's education commissioner, Willie L. Jett II, defended his agency's oversight of the programs. He said the agency reported suspicions and concerns to law enforcement. Okay, then we have a second scandal. 2 months ago, Justice released information on a separate scandal: millions of fraudulent Medicaid claims submitted through a program called Housing Stabilization Services. Okay. And supposed to combat homelessness. So this is why government should get out of welfare, because even if it has good intentions, it's not going to be able to prevent fraud like this, and people are going to take advantage whenever they can. And so that's why welfare should be done on a community basis, and communities are much more capable of following up on what happens to the welfare money, and also helping the people who are receiving the welfare to uh, stand on their own 2 feet through whatever it takes: training, education, capital, whatever it takes for them to stand on their own 2 feet and get off of welfare. All right, gotta go. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone in America, and a happy Thanksgiving that you can save until your own Thanksgiving to people who are not in America. God bless, Godspeed. May his kingdom come quickly.